Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon. Bolstered by government and consumer spending, Korea posts its highest economic growth in 2 years in the second quarter, with the nation's GDP expanding 1.1% from the previous 3-month period. In a race against time before a scheduled military drill between South Korea and the United States, the two Koreas are trying to narrow their differences in terms of reopening the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex. Plus, in response to the near month-long unrest in Egypt following the overthrow of former President Mohamed Morsi, the US delays delivery of 4 fighter jets to the North African country. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with some really good news for Korea. The Korean economy grew at its fastest pace in 2 years in the second quarter of this year, bolstered by government stimulus measures and a recovery in consumer spending.
Korea's slowing exports, however, are becoming an increasing cause for concern. Our Hwang Jie reports.
The Korean economy is finally out of the trap of growth in the so-called 0% range. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the nation's gross domestic product rose 1.1% in the April to June period from the previous quarter, the fastest pace of expansion in 2 years. It's also the first time in 9 quarters that the country is posting a quarter-on-quarter growth of more than 1%. From the same period of last year, the economy expanded 2.3%. The recovery was largely thanks to the government's stimulus package and an end to a contraction in private spending. Government spending rose nearly 2.5% in the second quarter from the previous 3 months, while private consumption rose 0.6%, reversing from a 0.4% drop in the first quarter. After the National Assembly approved a supplementary budget of more than $15 billion in May, President Park Geun-hye asked economic policymakers to advance spending in public projects. Coupled with the extra fiscal spending, the central bank has cut its key interest rate to help inject more money into the economy. Experts say, however, the slowing economy in China, Korea's biggest trading partner, will limit Korea's export-driven growth for the rest of the year. Korea's exports rose 1.5% in the second quarter, slowing from a 3% increase in the previous quarter. In the face of sluggish global demand, facilities investments declined, further clouding the outlook. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Now, the two Koreas are holding another round of working-level talks, the 6th of their kind on this Thursday, as they try to normalise business operations at the inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex.
For more details, let's connect live to our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee at the Inter-Korean Dialogue Headquarters here in Seoul. Hello, Sung-hee, give us the latest.
Guys, the 6th round of working-level talks between the two Koreas got going just about 2 hours ago in the North Korean border town of Kaesong. Opening the talks, the North Korean chief delegate said that while the two sides have always begun their talks with positive remarks, they have been unable to produce positive results in the past. He said that the two lacked consistency and added that they will be able to produce good results only when they are consistent. In response, the South Korean official said that if the two sides were sincere and determined about normalizing the Kaesong industrial complex, they will be able to narrow their existing differences. Just to recap a little on the results of the 5th meeting on Monday, the two Koreas made progress on some fronts, like allowing foreign companies to build factories in Kaesong, but they still remain divided on the main issues. Basically, Seoul wants the North to provide safeguards against another unilateral shutdown, while Pyongyang is calling for an immediate resumption of operations at the complex. The North is reluctant to promise such measures because that would mean it's taking responsibility for the current prolonged suspension of operations. Today's meeting is deemed critical in determining whether the complex will be normalized or will face a complete shutdown, so let's keep our fingers crossed that the two Koreas will be able to come up with some positive results this time around. Guys?
Yes, well, thank you, Sang-hee. That was our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sang-hee with the latest on the critical sixth round of inter-Korean talks on the Kaesong complex.
Turning now to the defense cost-sharing talks between Seoul and Washington. The United States reportedly wants South Korea to cover more costs to have U.S. troops stationed here on the Korean peninsula. South Korean media reports say the U.S., citing its federal budget cuts and North Korean threats, has asked the South to increase its contribution by some 15% next year to a total at least 1 trillion won or $890 million US dollars. There are also reports Washington even suggested a 50-50 sharing of the cost during the Allies' second round of talks in Seoul that ended on this Thursday. During their previous meeting in Washington, the South Korean side had proposed adding only yearly inflation to this year's payment of nearly $800 million. The two sides will meet for the third time sometime late next month. The U.S. House Foreign Affairs Committee has passed a bill to extend the existing U.S.-Korea Civilian Nuclear Energy Pact by 2 years. The bilateral accord is set to expire next March, but the bill would extend that to March of 2016, allowing the two sides more time to iron out their differences before revising it. The bill must still pass the full House and the Senate before going into effect. Seoul wants to be able to enrich uranium and reprocess spent nuclear fuel, as its current nuclear waste facility is expected to reach capacity by 2016. But Washington is hesitant to agree to the demands on concerns over proliferation. Virginia legislators are seeking to add the name East Sea to school textbooks in that state to refer to the body of water between Korea and Japan. Tim Hugo, a senior Republican member of the Virginia House, said Wednesday that the new bill would require all textbooks authorized by the Virginia Board of Education to use two names for the body of water, East Sea and the current Sea of Japan. Hugo said that it is important to teach students that there is a dispute between the two countries over the body of water, and he will introduce the bill next year. Koreans believe the correct name of the body of water is East Sea, and that the name Sea of Japan is a remnant of Japan's imperialistic past. In May, Virginia Senate Democrat David Marston said he would reintroduce a similar piece of legislation next year after state legislators voted down the initial bill. The demilitarized zone that separates the two Koreas was set up as a 4-kilometer-wide military buffer zone after the Korean War Armistice Agreement was signed 60 years ago. But now one environmental research group has revealed the DMZ is actually a fair bit thinner than it used to be. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
The Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ as it's commonly known, was drawn up as part of the 1953 Korean War Armistice Agreement. The DMZ was 2 kilometers south and north of the military demarcation line. As the DMZ has been untouched by humans in 6 decades, it has become a haven for rare animals and plants. Unfortunately for them, a local environmental research group has revealed the size of the DMZ has shrunk more than 40% compared to its original size. In 1968, North Korea pushed the northern limit line south from the original 2-kilometer limit. South Korea followed suit, pushing its southern limit line north. The distance from the northern limit line to the southern limit line should be 4 kilometers, but in some parts of Gangwon province, the southern limit line is only 700 meters from the military demarcation line.
Firstly, we check the DMZ, then we analyze the demarcation lines through satellite images, and we also calculated the total area of the DMZ.
In 1953, the DMZ measured 992 square kilometers. Now the area only measures 570 square kilometers. The Environmental Research Group says the ecosystem in the DMZ has been damaged as the demarcation lines were not obeyed. 김영길, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye says that cultural prosperity will be the key to enhancing the people's quality of life, boosting the economy, and eventually bringing peace to the Korean peninsula. Speaking at the first meeting of a Cultural Prosperity Committee Thursday morning, President Park said culture is the most important tool in sharing different values with people around the world and strengthening ties with other countries. The committee, headed by Honorary Festival Director of the Busan International Film Festival, Kim Dong-ho, will be in charge of advising the President on cultural policies and enhancing communication between the government and artists. Prosecutors are stepping up their efforts to collect a massive outstanding fine from former President Chun DooHwan. They have seized 3 properties owned by the former president's second son, who rushed to sell 2 of them late last month before a law allowing the authorities to collect money from the former president's relatives went into effect. Kim Yeon-ji has more.
This is a luxury apartment building in Itaewon, Seoul. One unit is 250 square meters and is valued at roughly $1.8 million. 3 of the units were owned by former President Chun DooHwan's second son, Chun Jae-yong. But prosecutors have learned that the younger Chun hurriedly sold 2 of the units to an acquaintance late last month, on the same day that the National Assembly passed legislation giving the authorities more time to collect a massive fine the ex-president owes the country that's worth $146 million. The legislation also allows the authorities to investigate the former president's family members and collect hidden assets. Prosecutors say the ex-president's son arranged for his acquaintance to purchase 2 of the units to avoid his assets from being confiscated. Earlier this month, prosecutors seized all 3 apartment units and are currently investigating whether the president's son initiated an illegal transaction through his acquaintance. The former military strongman was in office from 1980 to 1988 and ordered a bloody crackdown on a pro-democracy movement in 1980. Chun was convicted in 1996 of mutiny and treason and was ordered to pay $192 million he had received in bribes. But the ex-president has only paid a quarter of the money so far and claims he's broke. Prosecutors have thus far confiscated 7 private safe deposit boxes belonging to relatives of the ex-president. The boxes were found to contain some 50 bank books belonging to Chun and his wife Lee Sun-ja, as well as several pieces of expensive jewelry. Prosecutors are now tracing the bank accounts to see if they are linked in any way to the ex-president's slush fund. Kim Yeon-ji, Arirang News.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Amid the ongoing political unrest in Egypt, the United States has decided to delay the planned shipment of 4 F-16 fighter jets to the North African country. It's the first direct indication the Obama administration is concerned about the current situation in Egypt following the ousting of former President Mohamed Morsi by the military earlier this month. Our Park Ji-won has more.
The U.S. has decided to halt the delivery of 4 F-16 fighter jets to Egypt.
Given the current situation in Egypt, we do not believe it is appropriate to move forward with the delivery of F-16s at this time.
The 4 jets are part of a previously arranged deal in 2009 between the 2 countries to send 20 F-16 jets to Egypt in 2013. While 8 of them were already delivered in January, the U.S. has not announced when it will reschedule the delivery of the jets. According to Pentagon spokesperson George Little, President Obama made a decision to send Egyptians a signal that Washington is concerned about the current instability in Egypt following the ousting of Mohamed Morsi, the country's first democratically elected leader, earlier this month. The Obama administration is calling for a return to a civilian government.
We remain focused on encouraging the interim government to move towards an inclusive process, which includes elections, civilian elections, and we're monitoring closely steps they're taking to do just that.
Officials stressed, however, that the U.S. has not decided whether to suspend other military aid to Egypt, as completely cutting off U.S. military assistance to Egypt does not serve the best interests of the U.S. A joint military exercise between the two countries, scheduled for later this year, is to proceed as usual. The U.S. provides about $1.5 billion worth of military aid to Egypt every year. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Despite early reports to the contrary, U.S. intelligence leaker Edward Snowden is still said to be stuck in a transit zone of a Moscow airport, where he has been holed up for more than a month now. Reports emerged Wednesday that Snowden had been granted a document saying his temporary asylum request to Russia was under review, which would allow him to enter Russian territory. But a Russian lawyer who has been counseling him later denied the rumors, adding the 30-year-old fugitive is now looking to start a life in Russia and is prepared for a legal battle if Moscow denies his request. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry talked with his Russian counterpart on Wednesday, reiterating Washington's demand that Snowden be extradited to the U.S. to face felony charges for leaking details of U.S. surveillance programs. The Eurozone's manufacturing output grew more than expected in July, driven by expansion in Germany and France, raising hopes that the bloc that has suffered from a prolonged recession is beginning to stabilize. Market Economics said Thursday the Purchasing Power Managers Index had risen to 50.1 from 48.8 in June, going above 50 for the first time in nearly 2 years. The index is based on a survey of purchasing managers, and a reading above 50 indicates expansion. Experts attributed the growth to the expansion of Germany's manufacturing sector and increased business activity in France. The Eurozone economy, meanwhile, is expected to contract by 0.6% this year.
At least 60 people have been killed and scores more injured after a train derailed in northwestern Spain. Officials say all 13 carriages of the train came off the track near the city of Santiago de Compostela. The train, which was carrying over 200 passengers, was travelling from Madrid to the northwestern coastal city of Ferrol. It's not yet clear what caused the accident, but witnesses say they heard a loud explosion before the train derailed. Sources are also saying the train may have been travelling at twice the legal speed. Government officials say Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy will visit the site of the accident on Thursday. Beijing seems to be raising the stakes in its territorial tussle with Tokyo, as for the first time a Chinese military plane has flown through international airspace between the disputed East China Sea Islands and Okinawa Prefecture's main island. The move prompted Japan to scramble fighter jets to the area near the disputed islands known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China. Japan's defense ministry says China's move indicates its intent to expand its maritime influence. The Chinese government has yet to make an official comment. Analysts say the timing of the flight is noteworthy, as it comes a matter of days after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who has pledged to take a hardline approach to territorial matters, won upper house elections on Sunday. It's that time of year again, with school kids out on summer break. The peak summer vacation season has arrived for people here in Korea and also for many other parts of the world. Our Connie Lee has more on how Korea's main gateway, Incheon International Airport, readies for the influx of holidaymakers.
Feet are moving and bags are rolling. It's one of the busiest places in Korea at this time of year. Introducing Incheon International Airport, which is expecting a record-breaking number of passengers in the coming weeks.
Incheon International Airport is at its busiest from July 20th until August 18th. So we've expanded our facilities and increased the numbers of employees here to prepare the heavy influx of passengers during this peak season. Specifically on August 4th, we expect 148,000 passengers, which would be an all-time single-day record.
During this summer peak season, the airport is expecting nearly a 6% increase in passengers compared to last year. So officials are prepared. They've got more staff on duty and are opening check-in counters 30 minutes earlier than usual. But even taking these preparations as a given, Incheon Airport stands out for its efficient, high-tech facilities. For the 8th consecutive year, Incheon Airport was named the best airport out of more than 1,700 airports worldwide in 2 different categories: Best Airport in the Asia-Pacific region and Best Airport by size.
I have not traveled here before. Very pleasantly surprised. It's a beautiful airport, very clean. Everyone's been friendly. The signage is great, easy to get around.
The airport even boasts a movie theater, which is right next to a skating rink, which is not too far from a stage for musical performances for guests to enjoy.
This is one of the airport's main attractions, its concert series, which features different musical performances every single day, 365 days a year.
But despite the airport's modern feel, it also has traditional touches mixed in here and there. One of the airport's newest attractions is its cultural Heritage Avenue, featuring traditional Korean-style deco and various shows to give guests a little taste of ancient Korea.
It's very interesting for us to know about the culture of Korea, and we liked it very much. It was a pleasure to be with the royal family.
Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Let's now get an update on the forecast with our weathercaster Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Good afternoon, Ji-hyun.
Well, very good afternoon, Mark and Yusun. Now, temperatures are soaring up into 30s in Seoul today with a lot of sunshine. And here's a quick question for both of you. Now, which districts in Seoul do you think is the hottest and the coolest weather-wise?
Well, you always catch me off guard with these quizzes,
Yes.
Ji-hyun. It's not really fair, is it? But I would say perhaps Gangnam or Yeouido with its skyscrapers, you know, maybe traps the sun a bit.
Right.
And I'd say probably the coolest would be somewhere where there aren't so many tall buildings. What do you think, Yusun?
Well, Mark, wherever I am, I think it's the hottest.
Right.
But so, Ji-hyun, what's the right answer?
Well, actually, Mark was right about the hottest spot. Gangnam and Yeouido are the hottest districts in Seoul, whereas the coolest spots are Jongno in the north, Gangseong just south of the Han River, and Gwanak, which is south of Seoul. But no matter which part of you are in Seoul, we'll all have hotter and sunnier conditions. In fact, it's not just the capital. The rest of the country will have a hot summer day today. Now, but please do remember, monsoon season isn't over just yet, and the monsoon front is down in the south coast, so Jeju could get some rain in the afternoon, but it will be very spotty. Now, the weather tomorrow should be similar to today, and we'll continue to have sunny skies till Saturday. Then rain clouds will start to roll in again, and on Saturday night and Sunday should be a rainy day for most regions. But right now, as we can see, we have few clouds breaks in, but that's about it. But in Daegu and the surrounding areas, the heat wave advisory there has been upgraded to a heat wave warning, so please stay out of the heat and sun if you're in that region. So with that, let's take a closer look at today's readings. Now, the Seoul, Gwangju, and Busan will get up to 31, that's 88 degrees in Fahrenheit, while Daegu should be extremely hot at 35. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. Let's see how other regions are looking. 1 second. There you go. Now, Jeju and Daejeon will get up to 32 with a good amount of sunshine, and Mount Kumgang will be topping out at 33. Now, that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. Now, the sun is shining strong today, so don't forget to apply a good amount of sunscreen before heading out. Now, that's all for me today. Now, back to you, Yusun and Mark in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jian, as usual, and those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Join us tomorrow at the same time at noon here in Seoul.